Welcome to Bridging Chicago, a podcast that aims to connect our listeners to Chicago's business, community, cultural, and charity leaders. Brought to you by SATC Solutions L3C. You can connect with us on Instagram or Twitter, where our handle is @BridgingChicago. For more information, including our email, visit us online at satcsolutions.com. Be sure to rate and subscribe to Bridging Chicago on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this podcast. Bridging Chicago.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast. I'm Nathan here alongside Sarry Ibrahim, and Sarry is the founder of Financial Asset Protection, and he is a financial consultant and health and life safety specialist. Sarry, thank you for joining me this morning. I'm really interested to talk about what you do and why you're passionate about what you do.
Hi, Nathan. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was researching what you do, and I think when we think of financial assets, when we think of financial consultants, rather, we think of people who are interested, obviously, in helping you grow your wealth. And so I think a lot of times that comes with focusing on that person and what, getting them more assets. But what was really interesting in learning about you was that you seem to be much more concerned about not just that person, but about why they want to do that and what's important to them in life, and sort of the purpose behind that seems to be a lot more of a focus for you. Am I right in that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we are a full service financial services firm. We help clients grow wealth, find more liquidity. We help a lot of real estate investors, business owners find more liquidity in their businesses. But the first step that it starts with is a financial analysis. And this is not so much of a numbers driven thing. It's more of getting to understand the client and where they want to go financially, like what are their specific goals and needs and wants, and we identify those in the financial analysis. Because in our opinion, there should never be like a should in financial planning. Like there is no such thing as one should be at this amount of money in retirement, or one should have X amount of dollars in income in retirement. These are all personal things, and people have different preferences. And it's our job to, before we recommend a solution, to understand what their personal preferences are. What's their opinion on money, on assets, on real estate, on other things that they want to do. We understand them in the financial analysis. This is our first step that we do with all our clients before we make any recommendations or provide any advice on where to go financially.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm really glad that you said that, because I think it gives people an understanding of what you do. And I kind of want to go back and talk about why you do what you do, to kind of connect this for people. And so why don't you start with sharing with us about where you're from? Did you grow up here in Chicago? Or if you didn't, what brought you here?
Yeah, so I did. I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in a suburb right outside of Orland Park. It's Palos Hills, and lived there my whole life. And then moved to the city in 2018. I live in Lincoln Park with my wife, and she's a nurse at Loyola Hospital, for those of you familiar with the Chicagoland area. And then, we've been living in the city since 2018. And I founded the company, Financial Asset Protection, in 2019. And the way it started was kind of counterintuitive, the way the company started. So before that, in 2016, I was wrapping up my MBA at Keller Graduate School in Chicago. And while I was doing that, I needed to kind of get a job and have this kind of alongside the job alongside the degree. I didn't want to just get an MBA without any real world experience. So I came across an opportunity at Allstate Insurance. And at first I was just like, I'm not that passionate about insurance. I wanted to do mostly project management. I wanted to work for a large company downtown, doing project management. And it was kind of a vague goal, or a vague career goal, but that's what I wanted to do. And then as I started to learn more about project management, I was like, you know what, it's not really for me. I'm not really into this kind of work. And then vice versa, when I was working at Allstate, I was like, yeah, I could see myself doing this long term, just listening to people, helping people achieve what they want through risk mitigation, and helping them protect their things that are most important to them, and being just more of a problem solver, because that's in my opinion, that's what insurance is, or insurance sales and marketing. It's more of problem solving. It's not so much of just selling insurance. And I liked the idea of being a problem solver. And then after that, I transitioned from Allstate into the healthcare field. So I worked with companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, Cigna HealthSpring, and I was a Medicare consultant. So I would work with people and help them, people who were like 64, 65 years old, merging off of their employer plans, a lot of union employees, people who worked for the city of Chicago, who were merging off of those plans onto their own individual Medicare plans. That was my job for a few years, helping them make that transition. And during that time, while they were making that transition, one of my clients asked me if I could help him with life insurance. Or specifically, he said cash value life insurance. And he said the cash value grows over time. Eventually, it pays for itself. And I had no idea what he was talking about, but I was like, hey, this sounds pretty cool. It sounds like a good idea. It sounds very valuable for a lot of people, not just Medicare retirees. So I decided to do more research. I told him I would get back to him. And I went to Amazon and I just searched for books on life insurance. And I came across this book called The Bank on Yourself Revolution by Pamela Yellen. And this book talks about the strategy called the Bank on Yourself strategy, or the Bank on Yourself concept. It's also similar to the infinite banking concept. And now I was completely hooked on this concept. At the end of the book, there was a section that said if you wanted to join as a financial advisor with the organization, and I did. I applied for that part, got accepted, and then I started the company Financial Asset Protection. We are a Bank on Yourself kind of authorized group. We're part of the Bank on Yourself organization, and then we also still do Medicare. So it's kind of like we've joined them together now, financial planning with the Medicare services, and now it's kind of stretched into a whole new world now, where it's this concept, the Bank on Yourself concept, is not it's not just something that for retirees or people just specifically for retirement, but it could be for anybody who literally makes money and spends money, which is probably everybody in the world. And this is why I've been doing a lot of guest podcasting, because I want to talk about this concept and why it's so important for a lot of people, and why I actually started my own podcast called Thinking Like a Bank. So that's what brings us all here today and connects us together.
Yeah, and that's what we try and do here on the podcast, is we try and connect people, business leaders, community leaders here in Chicago with our listeners. And so we always have to make it about that connecting point. And I think that what you were talking about really sort of drives your passion for what you do. But can you talk about, like, when you were young, maybe some of those things that you might have seen or experienced, or that you did that you're like, oh, looking back, I can see how that kind of helped shape me who I am, because all of what you're doing now, you obviously are very passionate about. But as you said before, you weren't really sure about insurance stuff, and then you ended up having a passion for that. And so, like, looking back, can you see where you as a younger person may have kind of said, oh yeah, I can see why I would want to do that now?
hmm Yeah, so at a young age, I kind of noticed that, like, for a lot of people, money was either a big problem or a big opportunity. So it was either the entry to opportunity, or a hinder, or something that would hinder somebody's goals or dreams, was money. And I kind of noticed that was like a big problem, and noticed that if you had the ability to save more money or make more money, you could solve a lot of problems. Not all your problems, but you'd be able to solve a lot of problems. So it was kind of this general money problem solver mindset that I had at a young age, maybe like at the age of like 11 or 12 years old, very young, junior high school, where I was like, money is such a big deal for a lot of people. And I didn't know much, obviously, 11, 12-year-old doesn't know much about money, but I knew that there's some sort of sentimental feeling for a lot of people behind money, and especially in regards to problems in their life. So I think most problems, most relationships, most friendships, most business relationships, most people connections are affected by money. And I was like, this is something that, again, I didn't know that there's careers out there like financial consultant. When you're young, you think of careers more like doctor, lawyer, engineer, that's it, like architect, just kind of general careers. um, if I knew that there was a career where you could help people make financial decisions and help them grow wealth over time, I would have chosen that at a young age. So it took me a while to find this career. I think, maybe it found me. But definitely, I enjoy what I'm doing right now, as far as it being more from a problem solving standpoint of connecting people to what they want to do financially, and definitely congruent with what I thought about money since, the age of 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah, I also want to take a step back and make sure you thank your wife for us. We are definitely appreciative of her services as a nurse. We know
Oh,
this year
thank you.
has to have been crazy for your family. And so we really
Hmm.
appreciate her doing what she does and you supporting her in that. And so
Thank you.
we are appreciative of all healthcare workers, obviously frontline workers, including grocery store employees and everyone who just kind of kept the thread of America going in this last year. And
Hmm.
thankfully, we're looking good, better on the horizon. So just want to make sure that you give our thanks to her. Um, and it's interesting what you were talking about in being a child and kind of thinking about money. I was actually having a conversation with a friend yesterday about this because, kids, I think a lot of times, like when I was young, I thought, okay, your parents just
Hmm.
swipe their card and, they pay for stuff. I didn't kind of make the connection between money having to be on that card and then, the store that you're shopping at
Yeah.
actually taking that money. And so how do you have you been able to talk to people about how to kind of have financial conversations with younger people, with kids or with
Hmm.
teenagers? Because I
Hmm.
think a lot of people wish that in our younger years that people would have taught us more about how to care for money, how to save, how to spend. Have you been able to have
Hmm.
a conversation like that with people?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I hear that a lot from people where we're talking about like different financial tips and strategies. And people are like, we never learned about this in school. We have to take like humanities and art history and all these courses that we'll probably never end up using. But, we don't take any, I think in my whole life in school, I had to take one course. It was like economics or consumer economics, my senior year in high school, just one semester. We learned about writing checks. We learned about how credit card companies work and how they charge interest and mortgages, how they briefly work, and how you have to save up money in a savings account over time, or else you can't just keep spending all your money. That's all we kind of learn. But it would be nice to have more of those courses and actually make them like mandatory for younger people. Maybe maybe as young as in junior high school, we were taught like this is the stock market, this is a bank account, this is what an accountant does, and kind of so people don't have to wait until they're like 35 years old to learn how to do these things. um, and and then yeah, definitely, I think that there's a big gap in education, financial education, at a young age. So one thing that we always recommend with clients before we work with clients, we recommend like before we jump into any numbers or talk about anything, we recommend we always send them like a few PDFs, videos, podcast links to kind of get some education on it, just some brief
Mhm.
education. So this way, once we get on the phone and we start talking, they have they're familiar with what we're referring to, like the concepts, they're at a basic level. We don't want to kind of just there has to be that self education behind it where you're picking up a book and reading it for your financial life rather than somebody making you do it.
Yeah.
So this is something we
Yeah.
recommend for all our clients to do to kind of get an understanding of what we do. And we actually, like, on every show, I always give away a book. It's called Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. I'll give it away for free if people reach out to our website, which I'll include at the end of the show. But yeah, definitely, there's a lot of free books, free YouTube videos, content out there, podcasts just like this that talk about this concept and talk about other financial strategies to help people like find more financial freedom in their life.
Yeah. And when one of the things that we've been learning a lot about on the podcast recently, especially, is about finances in the
Hmm.
under-resourced communities, where
Hmm.
we had a guest who shared that sometimes the answer is money. They just
Hmm.
need to have funds in order to provide for families, in order to build wealth, in order to
Hmm.
provide some stability in their lives. And so, for you and maybe your family, what is how do you kind of approach giving of your resources, giving of your money? Because I'm assuming that's built into this model of, if you want to be able to give to different organizations, how do you approach that? How do you look at your finances as a resource for other people?
Yeah, definitely. So I do try to contribute to charities. We work with one insurance company. It's called Foresters Financial. It's a not-for-profit organization, and they're also a charity-based organization. So they actually focus on charities. They focus on funding different groups. So it's really nice working with them because we get to offer that. Like for example, since one of the concepts we use involves life insurance, and one thing that's cool about this company is that they give you the ability to, like, let's say for example you had a life insurance policy with a $100,000 death benefit or payout. So if something happens to you, your beneficiary gets $100,000. In this situation, Foresters Financial will add on 1% on top of that, not reducing from about in addition to that to any charity you want, free of charge. So this is just these kind of small things that this company involves. It's nice to offer these to clients and have them, because a lot of clients are also very, they're also very focused on charities too. Some clients even allocate portions, and we see this too on the financial planning side. They actually allocate portions of their life insurance death benefit to go to charities, sometimes 20, 25% if they're really passionate about certain charities or not-for-profit organization, especially if they've been involved in it, like they volunteered there, they were on the board there. So yeah, definitely. And this is something that I kind of take seriously too. I'm a big fan of helping people from different communities, especially underserved communities, here in Chicago even. And there's a lot of communities like that here in Chicago. And there's so much that people could do even without having to give up so much money or so much time. But yeah, definitely, I love the idea of having a charity based, like even mindset too behind it. It's something too that I want to kind of dive more into. On you actually just brought this to my attention, because a lot of the things I talk about are just all about money and more on the higher net worth side. But I want to start more focusing on it. And in my podcast, I'm going to have an episode just on this. If you'd like to join me on that episode, or if you have any recommendations. But yeah, I do want to definitely take it more serious approach to charity based community networking and helping the communities all around the world, not just in Chicago.
Yeah, and we'll definitely give people ways to connect with you at the end, and including your podcast, because we definitely will check that out. Really interested to listen to those episodes. But uh, where you talked about earlier about money as a problem solver,
Hmm.
and I think some people, it's easy to see it both ways, and I'm sure it can go both ways, where money as a problem solver and then money as a problem maker as well.
Hmm.
So is there a myth that you can bust, or is there
Hmm.
um, a lie about money as a resource that people kind of buy into,
Hmm.
um, that you're like, no, that's not actually what it is,
Hmm.
but something that people generally think that is bad about money or bad
Hmm.
about financial planning, that you can kind of have to
Hmm.
say, no, that's not what we're doing here. This is different.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll kind of answer this two different ways. So one way, yeah. So when it comes to financial planning uh, and controlling your money, it's not just about growing it over time, and it's not exclusive for people that have money. That's a huge misconception. Is that financial planning is not exclusive only for people who have money. People who live paycheck to paycheck could still need to actually utilize financial planning strategies to be able to keep more money, not just take money from one hand and then give it to the other hand and then spend it, but rather they can keep it and grow it over time. So financial planning again is not exclusive only for people with money. It's definitely for people. Anybody who makes any amount of money could utilize or actually, I don't like to use this word, but should utilize financial planning to be able to keep more money. And the other misconception behind money is that money is just a tool. It's just something that we use to get from point A to point B. And as human beings, just having tools is not enough. So that means that if somebody has problems and then you give them money, it does not solve their problems immediately. Behind money, there must be mindset. And what that means is that you must understand where money comes from, how it circulates in the economy or in the world, how it grows over time, the concept of interest, and how you finance everything you buy, either through other people's money or your money or borrowed money or leveraged money. Somehow, some way, all money is leveraged from one person to another person. You need to understand that just having money sitting in a bank account isn't enough in these times, especially post COVID times and on times of uncertainty. So there's a lot of minds, a lot of learning behind money. And then take it to a further example. If somebody says, well, yeah, if I had a lot of money right now, all my problems would be solved. Well, partially, they partially be solved, but you can also open up a door for new problems. We see this a lot, for example, when people win the lottery. Like 80% of people, it's like a ridiculous statistic. It's like 80% of people who win the lottery end up filing for bankruptcy like 5 years later. They end up in a worse financial situation with 80% of people than they did before, and because they can't handle money. Same thing with life insurance proceeds. when people inherit a lot of money, especially at a younger age, 80% of those people as well end up like financially damaged in their lives because of they didn't know what to do with that money. They didn't know how to grow. They just kept spending it all to the point where they actually end up in debt. So you need to have a knowledge base behind it, and then a knowledge base behind money, and then vice versa to that. You see it all the time where people like literally come from nothing and then end up multimillionaires or billionaires because of their understanding of money and their understanding of themselves. In the world of entrepreneurship and running your own business, 80% of that comes from within you. 80% of that is you telling yourself you could do it. You understand this, you could do it, you have the ability to proceed. It's you qualifying yourself, 80% of that. That's also known as self-esteem. The other 20% of that is your money that you have, the access to money, where you went to school, where you grew up, who you're connected to, your degrees, licenses, certifications, everything else. But 80% of that, the biggest chunk, is you telling yourself you could do something. It's a mindset shift, definitely. And for those looking for financial freedom, 80% of it starts from within you and you telling yourself you could accomplish your financial goals.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to what you just spoke on, because I think that's one of the things that people really struggle with is, what if I'm not one of those people that came from a family that had money, or that
Hmm.
went to the right school, or that found the right program, or did the right internships or whatever? Because obviously, uh, the world doesn't distribute these things fairly.
Hmm.
People who have had this privilege handed down have a much easier time
Hmm.
getting a lot of these resources, or getting into the better schools, or
Hmm.
getting the education to do that. And so, because the world doesn't distribute these things evenly, there are people who are coming into this who feel like they're already behind,
Hmm.
and they're trying to play catch up. So for those people, for people who don't feel like they have been resourced in the past in order to set themselves up as well, what would your message be for them, as far as like what I guess it can be daunting to do this. And so what is your message for people who just don't feel like they're even at step one?
Hmm. Yeah, so as somebody myself who grew up to an immigrant family, I definitely have that feeling where it's just kind of like you're 100 steps behind people, as far as career-wise, entrepreneurship, and other aspects of, especially living in the United States, for sure. I do have that feeling. And then I would say to people who are in similar shoes, um, your adversity is your advantage. So what is holding you back and what you lack is actually your benefit. And specifically, what I'm referring to is, if you want big things and there's a lot of things, obstacles behind you, those are the reasons why you should accomplish big things in life. Usually, typically, you hear a lot of people say, they'd rather hire, immigrants or hire people that grew up in an immigrant family as employees, or partner with people like that, because they're typically more assertive and more, there's a higher need for more money. If you grew up to a family or that's already wealthy, lived in a wealthy community, the desire to make a lot of money is probably not as significant as somebody who did. So your adversity is actually your benefit. It's what's going to help you in your life. It's your edge, your advantage. It's not your disadvantage. And then the other way to put it too is, I think that from a philosophical standpoint, all humans are created equal. Everybody at some point in life, um, we start from the same place and we end in the same place. So everybody eventually is equal. Just people are equal have advantages at different times and different places. But eventually, all humans are created equal. We all have similar minds, similar desires, similar emotions. And I think that people who are very wealthy and who are doing very well in life know that the world doesn't give them anything, and they just have methods and tools and systems in place and strategies in place that do not rely on other people giving them things. And it's counterintuitive, because you might say, well, yeah, obviously they're not going to rely on anybody else because they're already getting a lot of other help and resources from other people. But the reality of it is that people who are very wealthy are thinking of the world collapsing. They're kind of prepared for that. And it actually becomes the opposite. When the world does collapse, they actually end up making more money and they have more resources. So the point is that anybody could, everybody should, or everybody could understand that there's a lot of control you have from within you, and a lot of things that you could take advantage of and take control of. 80% of it starts with your mindset and you telling yourself you could accomplish something. So in my opinion, it makes no sense when I hear people say, I can't do much big, I can't, do really big things because I'm not connected to the right people, or I don't have the right resources. And the reality of that is people who have started the largest companies in the world and started the best inventions, and Apple and Google and all these crazy things that we use on a daily basis, those founders too, and those people didn't start off any better than other people. They started off the same way. They hacked their minds from within and told themselves that they could do it. And this is something too that you need to kind of practice over and over again. And I would say that people who have more advantages in life are people who have been practicing more of their inner mindset as opposed to other people. Because from a standpoint too of um, lacking resources or lacking advantages, you also it starts off from an exterior standpoint, and then it sinks into an interior point. For example, you have lack of funding, lack of resources, lack of connections, and then that's not the problem. The problem is that when it sinks further in from an exterior standpoint into an interior mindset part, where now you're telling yourself you can't do certain things because of the lack of advantages. And I think that's the biggest issue that people have, is that you never want your environment or your external factors to control your inner mindset. This is when you oppress yourself, and this is when you hold yourself back, and you never want that to happen. Nobody could tell you what to do. You could control anything, you could do anything you want in your life, as long as 80% of it, as long as it comes from within. 80% of it comes from within your mind, and you telling yourself you need to do it. And then you have to practice every single day and have systems and tools in place where you're controlling your inner mindset and telling yourself what you want, regardless of how much money you have, or where you grew up, or who you're related to, or who you're connected to.
And I'm assuming this is something that you saw in your parents when they came here. It's just something that really drove them to provide for your family, and then you saw this growing up in them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, growing up to immigrant family, it's both sides. There's an advantage and disadvantage, right? So the advantage is that we definitely, um, and not just our family, but other immigrant families too. They want kind of, they really want the American dream. They really want people, their children, to do bigger things because of how hard it was to come over here and how much sacrifice and how far people who, and for those of you who don't know, like immigrant families are like, it's like a 30-year gap, like it takes like a long time to get back up on your feet and to be able to do things to catch up to somebody who's already been in the country for a while. So obviously you have to try your best. You have to do everything much harder. And then I would say the disadvantage too is that immigrant families don't want their children, and from what I've seen, really, and again, not to generalize all immigrant families from all countries in the world, but also they will kind of want you to stay on the safer side. And at least my family, they wanted me to kind of just get a really good job, a really good corporate job with benefits, good pay. And that's not something I did that and I liked it, but I believe there's more to it. And which is why I started the company, which is why I started my own business. So at first, this is something they didn't want. They didn't want me to go down the path of entrepreneurship because it's a rough patch to go on. And it's like they don't want to bring that back up now, like that, all that struggles again. But now that I did, it's like now they're supporting me after I already did it. And I see this a lot too with my other friends who their parents are also immigrants. They don't want them to really be self-employed or own businesses. They want them to work for big American companies with good benefits, good pay. Stay on the safer side, stay within the advantage side of life.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to what you were saying earlier as far as adversity being a resource, and that
Hmm.
what drives you is oftentimes is that adversity. We all have some kind of adversity in our lives, and so
Hmm.
I think a lot of times whatever people have told you can't do, or
Hmm.
whatever people have told you that you shouldn't do,
Hmm.
kind of drives you to do that thing or to do something
Hmm.
really big. And so I think it's interesting when you talk about immigrant families
Hmm.
wanting the American dream. I think a
Hmm.
lot of us wonder if the American dream is still a thing, and I think
Hmm.
from what I'm hearing from you, it is in the way of getting to be in a place to where you can come to a place where you can kind of be who you are and
Hmm.
raise your family the way that you desire, and to provide for them in the way that you desire. And so I think that one of the
Hmm.
really interesting things there is that it kind of, the American dream is really the individual dream now, where whatever you want for your family, there's a way to make that happen. And I think
Hmm.
in the work that you're
Hmm.
doing with the financial end of it, I think it is a very individual thing. But
Hmm.
do you see that also kind of working into society or culture as a whole, or like in the area around them? How do those two things kind of come together, where someone who has this individual dream or this American dream ideal, how do they come alongside the people around them, or how do they bring people around them to kind of make that happen in the context of the world that we live in now?
Yeah, so I would say that you definitely in almost all situations you become like the people you're around. You know the way we speak, it's because the accents we have, the words we use, the tones we have are because of the people around us. We were able to subconsciously mimic them and speak like them and use the same words as them and have the same accents as them. And the same is true with financial success and entrepreneurship, and even coming across all your goals in life, or accomplishing your goals in life. It's that you want to be around the same people you're at around, the people who you want to be like. You want them around you, because subconsciously you end up copying those people. You end up doing the same things they do. You say the same things they do. You think like those people. It's like it's quote, your net worth is your network. You always want to put yourself in the same room as people who are kind of ahead of you. Actually, you want to be the least successful person in the room, because and then once you become the most successful, then you need to kind of do it all over again. Always kind of networking and always being engaged with people who are highly successful and doing things, the things that you want to do, similar career paths to what you want to do, but on a higher level. Like for example, one thing that I've done is my goal is to have an international financial services firm where I can help people from all over the world grow their wealth, accumulate wealth over time, solve their money problems. That's my goal. It's mostly going to be in the U.S. and Canada, but also some countries around the world too. What I'm doing is I'm partnering up. I'm constantly staying on the phone. I'm doing podcasts with other financial advisors who do similar. Some financial advisors, you know, they have three offices: one in Mexico, one in the U.S., and one in Canada, and they have services throughout all of North America. That's somebody who I would want to kind of you know be like. Just one person I'd like to kind of be like. One way that you could market with people, besides podcasting is obviously very nice. And now I know you, Nathan. I know some of your background, so it's cool. Podcasting is nice. Also to volunteering. Before COVID, it was much easier to volunteer because you can go on like face to face and meet with people. And actually, what's crazy is there's this book by Brendan Burchard. It's called I forgot what it's called, Highly Successful Habits. And the book talks about, I think it's what's called, Highly Successful Habits. Yeah. And the book talks about people who volunteer and network within their communities tend to be one of the wealthiest people in a community, because they're always they have, first of all, they have the extra time to volunteer, and they are connecting with other people. And volunteering is like a free way to connect with a lot of people. And for those of you who've never volunteered before, you actually end up volunteer with a lot of people who are very successful, the people who are doing a lot of cool things. And especially if it's something that you want to kind of shape your your goal or your career goal or your business goal, have it relevant to, or meet people that are already in that area, so that way you can kind of copy them. And the word copy kind of seems a little uh, ingenuine. But what happens is that with as being human beings, back to the philosophy of being human beings, we copy everything we do. Everything we do subconsciously sinks into our subconscious mind, and we mimic and copy everything around us. What people say, what people do, how people react, how they think. You come across this. This is how two friends are similar. This is also how, if one friend goes to jail, the other one's very likely to go to jail too. And then vice versa. If one friend starts a multi-billion-dollar company, the other friend is probably going to start either a multi-million-dollar company or a multi-billion-dollar company, or is going to do something as successful as that. It's not so much of the competition and mimicking somebody, but your mind attracts certain things and certain qualities from other people, and then copies those things. Even in your hand gestures is copied from other people. So that's something that's pretty cool. It's cool, and the way you can have it to your advantage is by being around the right people at the right time.
Yeah, and on that subject, I kind of want you to share about, I think one of the things that concerns people is putting their trust in the wrong people. And I think,
Hmm.
I work at a law firm. We
Hmm.
know that there are bad lawyers out there. We historically, I'm not a lawyer, but lawyers historically have a reputation for, some of them can be not so on the up and up, but I think all the ones that I know are great, and they really want the best for people. They really want to help people, um, and so for someone who kind of has the same perception of financial planners who say, okay, your success is built off of my success. So the more that I
Hmm.
make, the better that I do, the more wealth that I build, the more wealth that you're building also. And so I think that can concern people as far as, um, are they doing this for me, or are they doing this for them? And so I guess, how would you respond to that? And then what advice would you give to people to help them from, being around the wrong people and putting their trust in the wrong people?
Well, yeah, definitely, and I appreciate you mentioning that from a professional standpoint. Like, for example, if somebody's asking, "Well, how do I know a lawyer is good, or how do I know an accountant is good, or how do I know a financial planner is good?" Well, one of the things that a lot of professionals, one quality that good professionals have, is their curiosity and care for other people. And what that means is that, are they asking the right questions? How much do they care? And questions signifies how much somebody cares about you. So imagine, for example, you're meeting somebody and you ask them a question and they just answer it, and that's it. And then you ask them another question and they just answer again. Obviously, they don't really care that much, but now vice versa, if somebody's asking you, question after question in a generous and polite and appropriate, socially appropriate way, they're asking you questions, you're going to be like, wow, this person's actually like genuinely like interested in me. This person actually like, they're taking the time to actually get to know me. And the same is true with financial professionals and accountants and lawyers, the ones who just take a step back and then just ask questions. And again, it's socially appropriate questions, it's engaging questions, questions that could help you solve a problem or reach an opportunity. That's one huge quality of people who, a good sign of good people, where they ask questions and they're curious about you and they care about your situation. I've had to hire lawyers before, and I completely exclude lawyers who don't care what I'm saying. A lot of lawyers are like that, or a lot of professionals, not just to bash on lawyers, but a lot of professionals like that. They just kind of just don't want to hear the other person talk. They just want to hear themselves talk. They want to control the conversation and lead it somewhere. And I don't hire those people. I don't work with those people. I want to work with somebody who is going to give an adequate response. Like, imagine if you went to a doctor and the doctor was like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And you say, "Oh, I have a headache," and then they just interrupt you and say, "Take this medication." Like, you weren't even done talking yet. How is that a suitable medication? How is that a suitable medical recommendation if you haven't even heard what the patient was saying? And the same is true with other people. Like, if you were talking to a lawyer and the lawyer doesn't even want to understand your situation, they just want you to pay them to start doing the work for them. Like, how are they going to solve your problem if they can't even have a healthy conversation with you? And the same is true with friends and other people. Like, if nobody has time to even listen to you, why are you even associating yourself with that person? If they don't have enough time to even listen to your needs, your wants, what's going on in your life, that's a huge distinguisher of good people and people who are not so good, is their ability to listen to you and care about what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, that really resonates with me, because I think that that's what we all want. We want to know that the other person at least just cares, because then I think, like you were saying, you feel like you can build that trust, and
Hmm.
you can be sure that they're acting in your best
Hmm.
interest and not
Hmm.
in their best interest, because it's the way that it works. Obviously, one is going to help the other, but it still needs to be focused on the person, and what they want for their family and what they want for the
Hmm.
future. And I think that really speaks on that, is listening to build trust and not just to get to some end goal. I think is really important. Now, we obviously encourage people, if you have a financial planner that you work with, please talk to them
Mhm.
about anything that you've heard that you have questions on, or anything that you um, that this may have inspired in you to look into getting a financial planner, or maybe talking to your financial planner about different things that are about the future of your finances and your wealth. And so we don't want people to just listen and then go out and do things on their own. We always encourage
Yeah.
people. We're a podcast that looks to connect, but we're not giving answers here. We're just asking people to talk to
Mhm.
people in their lives, to connect with them. And so we definitely encourage you to talk to someone, if you have a financial planner, or if you want to look into one. Obviously, Sarry is I'm sure willing to help you there.
Mhm.
But if you could give one sort of, maybe just one piece of advice that you think would help the most amount of people. I know it's kind of a big question, but if
Mhm.
if there's one thing where you say, if I only got to say this one thing to you, what would you tell people, you know, that you think is the most important thing here?
Okay. The most important thing is you should like take out a piece of paper and then write down your goals, especially your financial goals, and kind of have it very and take your time with it and kind of um next month, next year, next 5 years, next 10 years, next 20 years. And then here's the difference is from the other what other people do is you want to review it every single day in the morning when you first wake up. That's your first step is to review your goals, because the more you see your goals, the more likely you are to achieve them. It's back to the subconscious mind. The subconscious, you want to feed the subconscious mind all the positive things and let it take over from there, because it's very powerful. And once you do that, once you re like re-look at all your goals again every single day in the morning, especially, everything you do during that day is going to revolve around reaching your goals and only reaching your goals. You start to filter out people, you start to filter out opportunities that come your way, you start to filter out your time. Everything you do revolves around getting to your goals when you do it that way, instead of, and you have to do it every single day. And of course you're going to have to revise them. It's going to straight, and that's good though, as long as you have your eye on the target and you're changing it. What you can measure, you can control. So if you have the ability to always see where your goals are, where you're at, and how far you are to get there, you're very likely to get there. So understand your goals and document them every single day and review them every day, and you'll get them. You'll very high probability that you'll get to your goals if you have the ability to constantly review them, um, and look them over. And we could actually help you do that. If you reach out to us, we can help you do kind of a goal analysis or an objective analysis where we're helping you identify what your goals are.
Yeah, you've given us two things that I think are really interesting, and I want to make sure that people hear them. Is number one, we were talking earlier about adversity as a resource, using your adversity uh, to propel you to the future, to inspire you to to reach for those goals. And then the second thing is, um, the one that you just shared with us, and what you can measure, you can achieve. I think that, or you can control. So what you can measure, you can control. I think that's really important, because it's impossible to reach a goal that doesn't exist.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
just, you can't do that, because there's so many opportunities, there's so many distractions out there, that I think having a set goal, having an understanding of what it takes, just like you were saying, writing it out, and being able to look at it, and being able to you know kind of take that as a mantra almost, I think is really
Hmm.
important. And so, making sure that people hear those two: adversity as a resource, and then what you can measure, you can control. I think those are two really good takeaways from what you've shared with us today. I mean, there's a lot, but I think those two for me really
Hmm.
stick
Thank
out.
you. Hmm.
And so I think that's great. Um, we are running out of time here, and so before we go, I do want to make sure that we are able to have people connect with you if they choose. Again,
Hmm.
if you have a financial planner in your life, that's awesome, and you can connect with them if you have questions. But if you don't have one, if you want more information, we definitely encourage you to talk to a financial professional before you make any financial decisions. And so certainly, Sarah, your services are available to people. So let's share with people how they can connect with you, where they can find you, or where they can learn more about you.
Mhm. Yeah, so they can go to our website. It's finassetprotection.com, FIN, assetprotection.com. You can, I'll send you a free copy of the book, Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash, if you're interested in it. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Sarry Ibrahim. There's a LinkedIn connection from the finassetprotection.com website. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you'd like to connect with me there, that'll be good.
Yeah, and we'll definitely link all of your social media and everything. All the ways to find you, we'll link to the episode, and we'll link it to the posts that we do to promote the episode. And so make sure you check out the website. Our website is bridgingchicago.com, or you can look at any of our social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we'll make sure to connect Sarry's information to that. And so I want to thank you for your time today. It's been really, really good, and I think I've learned a lot. And I feel like there are people out there who care about both like making wealth and then caring for your family and protecting your future. And so I really appreciate you sharing. And I hope that people are inspired to talk to someone about their goals and to write those down and to really focus in on making those goals happen. Because I think I've because of the podcast, I've had the opportunity to talk to so many people who are doing really inspiring things that kind of like what you shared. They aren't any more special than anyone else in the way of like they're not millionaires. They didn't come from millionaire families. They didn't they don't have this handed down wealth, but they kind of said, I'm going to do what I can, and I'm going to do what works for me, and they just kind of went from there. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, and I really appreciate being able to connect with people like you and the others who have come on here.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think we all learn a lot from each other, and that's our goal here, is just to help people learn.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I look forward to probably coming back on the show or having you on my show. But for sure, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank our listeners. We obviously really appreciate you. And so, you're listening to this likely either on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on a lot of them, Stitcher, SoundCloud as well. Anywhere where you are listening to this podcast, we'd appreciate it if you like, subscribe, leave a comment, or give thoughts on what you thought about the episode. And we certainly appreciate that. So we look forward to seeing you again next week. But thanks for listening to this episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solution Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solution Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.